Sorry.
This
Connecting.
meeting is being recorded.
There we go. So thank you very much for joining tonight. Hannah, are you going to do intro to start with?
Absolutely, I will. Hi everyone, thank you all for joining. So, some of you will recognise my face and more likely my voice. I am one of the co-founders of ICAN, and we've got Leanne here as well. So, this is the first sort of training or information session that we've done since we launched ICAN. And the thought behind that is, what is one of the most requested topics? So what have people asked us for the most? And this is one of them. How do I prepare for a school visit? How do I get ready? What do I need to do? How can I optimise the school visits? So James very kindly has offered to facilitate this for us. If you don't know much about ICAN, we can send you some information. Following the session, you can find us on Instagram, which most of you probably will have done via this post. And we're happy to discuss our services afterwards with you. But for now, we'll hand over to James and let him lead this session.
Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. If you are able to turn your camera on, it would be amazing to see faces if you're able to, but no problem if you can't. But just to introduce myself to start with, so my name's James. I run the Rebel Reading Society, which I'm going to assume that you've seen on Instagram. It's predominantly an Instagram-based small business that was set up in January 2025-ish to basically tackle the situation with reading amongst our young people out there. My background is primary school education, so I was a teacher for many years, English leader, so primary school teacher, year leader, English leader, assistant head teacher, deputy head teacher, and then I was primary school head teacher for 10 years. And I now run a tutoring business, which is good and, fine, but tutoring isn't the most creative world of work out there. This time January 2025, statistics came out, just before in 2024, basically talking about the dire situation with young people and reading and how little reading they were doing. It's statistics that we've all seen since, we've all probably knew before. It wasn't a big surprise, but I think what really annoyed me at that point was the fact that amongst all the press releases was just the same old stuff about, just the usual patter, and nothing really seemed to be any different. So I decided that either I did something about it or I shut up about it. So I went for the first one and thought, right, I know what I can do. I can do something on Instagram. Never used Instagram before. Well, I did the school account, but it was super basic and it wasn't really very creative. So I thought, I'll give this a go. Set up the page in January 2025-ish, and it's gone from there really. So I reached out to start with to authors, and basically didn't have a clue what I was doing and saying, and basically was in my messages to them was I was a head teacher. I like reading. I've promoted it for 24 years in schools. Could I help you celebrate your books? And from there, very quickly, it grew and it grew and it grew. And I now work with around 20 authors, publishers directly, authors directly, supporting them with resources for their school visits, coaching of them for their school visits. I've helped in person at school events, organised events in bookshops, and basically just try and do lots of things for the authors I work with to get them and their books connected as much as possible with young people. And obviously, the book industry, the traditionally published world, as I'm sure you all know, has a very set way of doing these things. So often an author is published on a Thursday, they get 2 weeks of love and attention and care, and then after 2 weeks, from my point of view, my non-industry perspective, they're spat out the other side, and they're left to their own devices. Published authors that I work with have come to me predominantly themselves because they're fed up, let down, bit flat with the provision they've been given from their publishers. So they've invested their own sort of hard-earned money effectively to get something a bit different. And even today, an author I was talking to, her second book is coming out with a well-known publisher, and they've organised nothing for her in regards to her book being published, which is next week. So we're now trying to scramble around, trying to organise a book tour for her and things. So, there's a real mixed bag out there. It's a crazy world. I don't know how, I'm assuming I'm talking to authors and illustrators here. and hats off to you all, because it's definitely something that I would struggle with because of the waiting around for emails to be responded to, the black holes of emails and communications. So I just basically want to help authors and illustrators get their books and their work in front of young people who need it to be inspired to read. My experience is of schools that have, my own schools I worked in or led, we had loads of books. We had, all the latest books because I researched them and knew what they were. But I had colleagues that worked in school, well, ran schools, led schools, and still do, that had really poor provision. So I'm passionate about getting books into schools, getting children excited, getting, adults excited, because as I'm sure we can all imagine, not every teacher is a reader. And often the big publishers think they're the big solution. So everything I do is coming from experience of kicking children, parents, and some staff members up the butt sometimes to get them reading more, because that's what I spent most of my time doing. I had, throughout my career, probably a small proportion of teachers that were naturally readers, that knew about children's books as much as I did. Most of them would shrug their shoulders and go, "Don't really read much, James." And I would look to try and fire them as fast as possible. Obviously, it's not quite as easy as that, so I couldn't. But so that's where everything's come from, those experiences, getting families that didn't really value reading, getting children in communities that weren't really reading-based communities reading, and having great success with it. So I've designed, in with the other authors that I'm already working with, a series of workshops which are going really well. And like I said, I've been doing all sorts of things for them. An example today, I met with two authors that I work with. We met online at 12:40. We met 60 children in a year five, in two year five classes in a school. I don't even know what the school was, to be honest, online with a really keen teacher that I'd met on Instagram. We met 60 children. I sent through the PDFs of them as authors with QR codes linking to where they could buy their books from. And for 20 minutes, we chatted, we introduced, talked, children got excited, books have been purchased already, apparently, by the school. And we had a great time and the authors loved it. And then they carried on with their day jobs or their writing. So lots of savvy ways to try and get authors connected with schools, as well as obviously supporting authors that are looking to go into schools, and sort of, earn a living from doing school visits. So for this, for the ICAN team, I've come up with a 4-part workshop. So it's made up of 4 1-hour sessions on Zoom like this, where I will share with you the sort of key things that I think are really useful for you as authors to sort of get into schools, and really sort of become an integral part of your local community or a wider community if you're looking to travel. So the first session that I will be delivering on, and hopefully you'll hear what I'm saying and think, well, that sounds okay, because we've kept the price down as little as possible, because this is obviously a supportive, network. So the first session is titled "It's Not All About You," because I think one of the big downfalls of the author world sometimes is that authors are expecting schools to pay for their visits, which I'm completely in support of and think that is completely right. But those visits are basically a standalone sales pitch where you would look to go to the school, or an author would go to the school, talk about them, talk about their book, and then want everyone to buy their book. And that's fine. But schools are not in positions these days to spend money on things that don't have an impact on their school. So the first session looks at understanding what, predominantly primary schools, but it's much the same for secondary schools, what expectations are on primary and secondary schools, so that you as an author can think about your skill set, your focus areas, your level of expertise, your passion, and think about what you can do to benefit that school, so that the message becomes, "Hi, I'm an author or illustrator of this amazing book. I would love to come to your school and talk about it, but I also could help develop your writers that are reluctant, your children that are struggling with their writing, your children that are really passionate about writing." So you bring extra value to it. One key part of that, and it's the most boring, stressful part of being a primary school teacher or leader, is the SATs. And obviously, if you're looking at being in a primary school, the schools are all expected to obviously do the SATs assessments, which are in 2 weeks' time, which if you know about what's expected of those schools in those hideous assessment expectations, you can be savvy in your pitch to those schools and say, oh, I could maybe work with those children that are not going to make age-related expectations. They could be the focus of my workshop, so that you can become a lot more strategic, savvy, as I said before, and so that the school takes more notice of what you're offering and looks at it and goes, oh, actually, we are really struggling with that group of children. Let's bring someone in with a fresh voice and a fresh set of skills and some fresh enthusiasm. So you're opening doors to the school, and all the time you've got to think the school are basically thinking, what's in it for us? So schools often are very not defensive, but are very aware that they can be used by many industries to advertise, to promote. You know, can we give you this, and can you hand this out? Can you celebrate this to your school? Could you give out these flyers? There's a lot of that going on. So you need to be thinking about what you can bring to the school that is going to bring something to them to benefit them. And if you're doing that, if you're adding value, that's where it's totally justifiable to charge for your time and your visit. And I think that's often the conversation I've had with many authors, where they've sort of gone, I hadn't thought about it like that. You know, they were looking to be paid to go and sell their book in school. Well, not many schools are going to say yes to that model. But if you're saying I'm an expert in creative writing, poetry, illustration, this is my work, this is what I'm amazing at, that'll really stand you in good stead. So that's why I titled it "It's Not All About You," and because if you're thinking about the school, and really thinking about what you can do, you're onto an absolute winner. And I said I was recording. I am recording for you. I just thought I'd forgotten then. Sorry. The second session is focusing in, I've called it, and it's basically understanding some of those smaller groups of pupils that are in schools, or I say smaller, but can easily be the majority. So maybe children that are less advantaged. So you may or may not know this, but in a primary school, let's just focus on primary schools for the moment. In a primary school, if a young person and their family has an income that is below a certain threshold, that young person will generate additional funds for the school, and that's called the pupil premium fund. That pot of money is based on each pupil that qualify for that, and that pot of money has to be spent on improving those young people's life chances. So if you're an author and you're looking to go into school, or an illustrator or a poet or any creative, you could easily be looking to focus your work on those children, so that pot of money is suddenly one that the school are able to sort of think, oh, actually, yeah, that is how we could use our money. The schools are accountable for that pot of money, and there has to be some sign of impact that whatever the money's being spent on, there's some benefit. So, for example, in my last school, we had 850 children. Of that 850 children, 40% were pupil premium. That meant it generated an extra £380,000 a year that we had to spend on things to improve their chances. Now, lots of that money does get spent on wages of staff, but there's also pots of money sat there waiting to be used. So it might be the school says, right, could you work with our pupil premium children from year 6? Could you have them for a workshop that lasts 2 hours? Yes. And we'd like to buy them all one of your books. Brilliant. So there's lots of little things like that. There's obviously children with additional needs, which it may be something that is close to your heart. It might be something you have experience in. It might be something that you've got, qualifications in. But that's a group of children that obviously schools are always looking to find ways to enhance their education. So, you might think, well, actually, I'm really comfortable to work with children that maybe have autism, or they do, have ADHD, or they do have physical impairments, because that's your background. So maybe that's something that you could really hone in on, because, as a mainstream school, to cater for all these needs is really hard. So it can be a really good sort of route to take. There's also obviously those people in school, young people in school, that are expected to do really well. So the school have to push them. And so if someone can come in with expertise in an area, then you can again really benefit the school. Often schools struggle with art and struggle with music because there aren't as many arts specialists and music specialists out there as we'd all want. So if you are, an illustrator with, a whole range of skills, you could be really bringing a lot to a school. The third session, I've put about getting sorted. So, if you're new to going to schools or you've had some experiences which have gone great or some that haven't gone great, is thinking about what made it great and giving you, insights from other head teachers. So in these workshops, others will join me to give their perspective, current head teachers, current teachers, so that you can really hear like what the connection between an author and a school is. But really getting into like, logistics, how can you communicate in advance so that it's really slick on the day? You might have had experience where you've gone to a school and the person in the front office has looked at you blankly and had absolutely no idea why you're there. You might go on a school visit and you walk in the hall and the children are all sat there ready and the projector doesn't work. So there's all these little things that we can iron out, with a bit of forward planning, a few sneaky tactics, to try and make your school engagement really, really successful. And as part of that as well, I think it would be really important to share with you some safeguarding elements. Obviously, not in huge depth because you don't need to. But I think as an author going into school, being someone new, being someone exciting, you stand every chance of a young person disclosing stuff to you in seconds because you're a new face. You're going to be doing something really good like art or writing or getting them comfortable and happy. That could easily lead to a young person just casually just dropping a pebble in your pond. So just knowing what to do if that happens is something that would be really helpful to you. Clarifying things about DBSs, and those things. I'll say that now because my advice would be do not have a DBS, because if you have a DBS, schools might try and leave you alone with children because of supervision numbers, and you want to avoid that at all costs. So my advice would be clearing up front from the word go, I don't have a DBS because I won't be left with any children on my own. The end. And if a school is expecting you to be left on your own with children, I wouldn't go to that school because I think that's putting you at risk, always. So that's a very simple stance on that. And I think that's, the advice I'm always going to give on that one. Schools are terrible for misusing guests. I mean, you may have had this already, but you could easily find yourself just dropped into a class of 30 children and everyone else leaves and you're the adult, which is appalling, but can happen. So, that's something to really consider. And then the fourth session I thought would be about, I want to talk to you about the world of Instagram and how you can make it really work for you. And I'm not talking like how you can get like massive followings, and get like, well, actually I can tell you some things I've learned recently because I've been on some courses, at the Bournemouth Writing Festival where I'm based, but just about what you can get from Instagram, because often there's a divide between the teachers and the authors. And actually, when that divide breaks down and you start looking for your own networks of teachers that are local to you or the right year groups, you can have some amazing success with Instagram and what it can bring to your author world, and some real positives. And it might be that you absolutely loathe Instagram. It might be that you're right at the beginning with your Instagram account. It might be that I'm talking to someone that's got, 20, 30,000 followers and is absolutely smashing it. But wherever you're at, there's definitely some things to consider from an education point of view, and how you can use it to make connections, and how you can use it to celebrate you as an author or an illustrator. Because I think one of the key things is letting people see as much about you as a person, obviously within reason, as possible. So if you're a head teacher looking to spend, let's say, £400 on an author coming into school, if I can go onto their page and hear them talk and see something that can like reassures me they're a great spend, then I'm going to be more inclined to do that than if I go to someone's page or website and there's no really a way of telling what they're about. So if you can remove any mystery around your author package, then you're going to be a lot better off when schools are having to, make a decision, do we, don't we? So I think Instagram is great. I mean, it's obviously where my business is based now, predominantly, and it can have massive gains. And if you are, have been sort of a bit like, reluctant with it, then I think it's worth having a good go at it. And I can show you some insights from a recent course, that I did about stories and creating, like telling a narrative a bit about you and your author world, and sort of those sorts of things, which I, did find very interesting. So that would be the four parts of the workshops. They would be sort of hours each, and I wouldn't be talking at you as fast as this, I promise. And the idea is that obviously throughout it, you're welcome to ask questions. You can email me, as much as you want. And then on top of that, obviously, there is the offer. I do, like I said, I work with authors individually. So, if you're sat there thinking, I don't know what on earth to do with school visits or all sorts of parts of, connecting with young people, obviously the services I offer are that, I do one-on-one coaching. If you haven't delivered to a hall of children before, that's something to consider. If you haven't, created resources for a year group or an age profile that you don't know about, then, maybe getting some advice on that could be good. So where to pitch your workshops, what things will work in your workshop, your presentation, we can make them for you. We can make resources. Our website, I say our website, it's myself and my sister-in-law and two other freelance people that work with me. The website has examples of all the authors we work with and resources we've created for them. So depending on where you are with your journey, there's definitely some ways that we can help and put packages together for you. But just to be clear, my background isn't publishing, my background isn't marketing. My background was purely selling things to schools, as in motivating and trying to get children to do things they didn't want to do, but I knew they had to or they needed to. So that's where my experience is, and I think it's proving to be very useful with authors. I work with a number of highly published children's authors, picture book creators, middle grade, YA. I do stuff for Walker Books. Currently, I'm doing for HarperCollins. I've got now others, DFB with online events, all sorts of different things, and yeah, support people in different ways. So that is about me. That's probably bombarded you with information. You're probably thinking, good Lord, I can't take more of him. Did anyone have any questions at all about what what I can do and support, or anything they have, or anything that you want covered, or anything, or any big pressing concerns at all? Are we all good? Oh, blimey. Either stunned silence. I think the key is, if you haven't got experience of schools, then I think whatever you do, whether it's workshops with me, one-on-one support with me, or whoever, I would definitely invest in yourself in that stage. And if it's something that you've been doing and you've not had huge luck, then definitely take a sort of moment to think. And I really think there's scope for all authors and illustrators to make a difference and get good, ins into schools. But you just have to be quite savvy with it. So please do consider it, because I think schools are great if it's going well, but I think also schools can, and the whole education system could be quite demoralizing for you as authors or illustrators trying to connect with them, get into them. You'll send emails that will never be responded to. You could send everyone, you could send out free books to schools that will just land nowhere. So your time and energy and resources can be definitely helped by getting some support. Hannah, sorry, did you?
I think we've got a hand up there. I was just going to say, if anybody has questions but they're not feeling like they want to raise them now, if you want to throw them over in our direction via DM, then we'll happily liaise with James and get some responses back to you on those as well.
Okay, cool. MG, so I don't know your first. I was going to have to go with your initials. Sorry.
Hi, sorry, it's Maria. It was all really, really helpful. One thing you didn't mention was how much it all costs, the
Oh, that's
four
okay.
1 hour sessions.
Oh, so the sessions, the four-part sessions, the 4 1 hour sessions. If you're a member of ICAN, it is I'm going to say ridiculously good price of £35 for all four. So the whole
Wow.
point is to help you. Obviously, you might think great, and then you might obviously reach out for services from me that we can put a package together for you. But the whole point of this was that, first of all, it was to be supportive of the ICAN, package, and encourage you to join. And yes, it is to upskill you, and in as fair a way as possibly can. So yeah, so it's literally what I mean. 35 divided by 4, so eight. What's that? £8.50 each
It's a
session.
bargain.
Well, it is a bargain. I mean, I don't mean, yes, of course it is, but it was meant to be. We've chosen it to be. If you're not a member of ICANN, it's I think it's double, isn't it, Hannah? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
it. Yeah, so it's 70 for
obviously, we want
non-members.
you to join ICANN because this is what this is all about. And if I think joining ICANN, you'll get your money back with straight away. So yeah, this is really about hearing things, and then obviously you might think actually I could do with some help with creating a PowerPoint or a presentation for my school visits, and then you might, and I can help you with that on a one-on-one basis. There's all
To
sorts of
be
options.
I think to be fair, I've been in schools before. I've published 5 children's books, so I've done school visits, and some are very hit and some are very miss. Some schools call you back a million times over, others you don't hear from. So from my perspective, it would be interesting to hear from your perspective as an ex-head teacher
Yep.
what I can do to increase my chances. So
Well, I think
yeah,
that's a really good point. And I also would say, like, I can imagine, well, not imagine, I know how deflating that can be. And it might be that the main thing you take away from it is not to be deflated and just recognize that some schools are useless. And that you, unfortunately, you could find yourself visiting a school which has got a huge turnover of staff, leadership that doesn't support reading and write, isn't their priority reading, believe it or not. Um, so there's lots of things that I could reassure you with, that if it's ever impacted your self-esteem, we can sort that out, because I can imagine, you know, I've emailed schools, I've offered free things in this role and been appalled at some of the lack of responses. Which, if it wasn't for the fact I know it's a school that's what they're like, I would easily have just been like, this is ridiculous. This is demoralizing. So yes, and obviously that range of schools then will factor in when you go to those schools. Are you welcome with red carpet, or are you the person they've forgotten is even coming, which is obviously another whole load of things to deal with. So there's all
yeah.
sorts of things there, definitely. And I think that's a really good question about the cost, obviously, but that point as well, that trying to get your head around some of these school ways might just help you feel more confident to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a really good course.
Oh, thank
So
you.
thank you for that.
Well, I mean, I've done so just as well. So the course that I've shared today, I've sort of done already with the authors that I work with and a few extras. So predominantly published authors, and I'll name drop a couple just to give. So like Lisa Thompson obviously has 17 middle grade books out, I think. I worked with her. She came along, listened to the sessions, and was like, "Wow, I never thought about that." Rashmi, uh, who's got Harry Kumar out recently. Um, Nat Harrison, Ash Bond, loads of published authors that I've got school experience now under their belt, but was still saying like, ah. So yeah, so hopefully, we'll see lots of people, and yeah, we have really good sessions.
How do you sign up for it? Just out of interest.
You have to sign your life. No, we just need to confirm that. It's probably going to be easiest at this stage, whilst it's probably going to be a case of you emailing probably me, and I'll just send you an invoice for the £35, I think it is, and then that's it. Probably going to be the simplest way at this stage, whilst we all sort of gather our bearings on setting things up and buying these things. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll work out a way to communicate after this session,
Okay.
times, dates, but they're going to be rather soon in the coming weeks, and then we'll arrange payment links and things to be sent to people, or invoices. So just whatever works.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Any other questions at all?
No, as I say, if there's any shy people in the room, that's totally fine as well. Feel free to send your questions afterwards, and we can get them answered.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I'm happy to put I'll put my email in the chat. So if you have any questions of or you might be sat there thinking that you already have additional things you want to work on, maybe. So I'm now multitasking. This is lethal, isn't it? Gosh. because you may have things you already want to sort of seek support on. Just checking. So that's me. And someone's just put in the chat about dates. We have earmarked dates, haven't we, Hannah? I think.
Yeah, we've got a few earmarked, so we will communicate those probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
But they are in the next few weeks, and there'll be one per week with a gap for
May
half
half term.
term.
Yeah. And our thinking was that we would try and get the 4 sessions in before the summer, so that if you're looking ahead and thinking, right, author visits, here I come, then we'd have you upskilled as much as possible, or clear on what you need to do, ready for sort of autumn workshops or sessions or visits that you might have ideas to book in. I think if you're looking ahead, I would start thinking of the autumn term now, to start thinking like where do I want to get booked in, or what now's a good time really.
An autumn term, I learned this after working in a school myself, because I just thought autumn term meant like autumn. We're talking about when kids go back in September.
September through to Christmas, yeah. And schools will start looking at their diaries soon, really. We're coming up to May half term. Once SATs are out the way, schools then will start looking, they'll start planning their subject leader work. So if there's an English leader, the English leaders will be looking, thinking, right, here's our weakness in story starters. We were really bad this year in year 6 at getting like dialogue into things. So you could, this is when people will be thinking, what are we going to do different next year? And then you magically send your email or your handout, ta-da, here I am, solution. So yeah, now's a good time. Planning around online stuff, yeah, absolutely, it does. It can involve that, and I do a lot of online stuff, big and small. So for Jasbinder VLAN, I did a live event with her for World Book Day, which had 5,500 children on it, which was brilliant. When it finished, I was absolutely bricking it throughout. And Jasbinder, she disappeared off camera to find her pet dog. So one word of advice, never do that. I had 5,500 children with 30 seconds on the clock before it timed out. And I had to actually call out like, Jasbinder, where are you? Because she was trying to find her dog to wave to us with the dog. So yes, I do big, small events online, and can definitely give you advice on that, and how to do that. And they are a really good way of connecting with schools in a really easy, low maintenance way. So I would definitely, look to help you with that for sure.
Great. Brilliant. Thank you for that. So yeah, on behalf of us at ICAN as well, thank you. We're really looking forward to getting stuck into this.
Pleasure.
Any questions afterwards, just point them towards us or James and we can get them answered for you.
Yeah, and if we clarify tomorrow how to reserve your place, then it'll just be, it's probably most likely be you just emailing myself, and then I'll just send you an invoice and then go from there.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, James.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. And I'll send you, Hannah, Leanne, now the summary, and then it can go out to people. Spooky AI speed, it does it at.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, guys. Nice to meet you all.
Speak soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.